If you're like me, you spent a lot of your childhood hours playing real-time strategy games like Starcraft and Command & Conquer, Warcraft, so Knee Deep in Hexes here claims to pull the best of those types of games and put it into a board game. How well does it do it? Hi folks, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee. I'm going to be covering this game today. I'm going to show you an overview of how it plays. Not all of the rules and everything, but I'll talk about the most important parts so you get a good idea of it, and then I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts on it. So here we go. Here's Knee Deep in Hexes set up on the table. This is a central board where players are going to be moving their pieces around, trying to fight and eliminate the other player's pieces. Over here is the supply of your own units, the buildings that you have, as well as cards. You're going to choose 2 leaders from the 4 that are available to you, at least here in the basic game. They're going to give you some starting production, some health for your base, as well as unique powers. But each one also is going to have cards that match that particular leader. So you'll combine 2 different leaders worth of cards plus these generic cards that are in both decks. That's the basic setup for the game. There is deck building, deck customization that you can do, but basically each person will always have 2 leaders and a deck of cards. There are 2 resources in the game. There is energy and there is materials. These yellow hexes show what is your maximum production. At the start of every one of your turns, you will move these gems up to your production level, and as you spend them throughout your turn, you will reduce them. Any left over are lost at the end of the round. The turn order of the game is outlined here on the back of the rulebook, as well as all of the stats for your 3 vehicle types and your 3 building types. Over here in the turn overview, the active player fills up their resources and draws up another card from their deck. They will then take all the actions that they can choose to do. They will resolve their enemy's war zone. They will declare a war zone of their own, and then lastly they will exhaust all of their resources. So what does that look like? Start of a turn, you'll draw a card. You have a maximum of 6 that you can hold in your hand. There are action cards here which you can pay for with resources in order to do the action shown on them. And there are war cards which can be played into battle for extra strength in that battle to help you win it. Now, during the action phase of my turn, I can spend energy to move my vehicles and materials to play out cards, construct new vehicles, or to construct buildings. I'm going to spend 1 energy to move this vehicle over here. I'll spend another energy, and they have a movement limit as shown in the stats page here. So your basic ACVs are building units, and they can move up to 3 steps per energy you spend. Tanks are heavy hitters, but only move 2, and the Paloozas are the biggest behemoths in the game, but they only have a movement of 1. The buildings typically cannot move, although there are going to be some game-breaking powers that allow maybe you to spend energy to move your buildings. Now, the reason that I would do this is that if you have 2 vehicles that have the build ability over here, in this case these 2 ACVs, you can spend materials to construct different types of buildings. These extractors over here, for example, will give you more resource production for being adjacent to the mineral and the energy harvest fields out there on the board, so next turn I'll have more to work with. I can also spend my last energy perhaps to move this tank over here, and I'm going to choose to play an action card as the last of my resources over here. So I'll spend these 2 and perform whatever the action card reads. Quantum Turret. Place a turret into an empty field anywhere on the battlefield. Now, once I'm done with all of my actions, I would resolve if my enemy had declared any war zones, after which I will declare my own war zone, and I'll explain what this means. By putting this marker here, I'm signaling the end of my turn. Any last resources would be gotten rid of, but I'm saying that these 3 clumps of hexes here are going to be engaged in a battle at the end of my opponent's next turn. So now that it's the end of my turn, they would have 1 whole turn to react. During their turn, before they place out their war marker, optionally, they will have to resolve the battle that is going on here. Each player sums up the strength in the battle on their side. So right now this is a 6 versus 6 strength. Each player is allowed to contribute 1 war card. It has to be specifically a war type card. And if it has restrictions, like for the blue player, they have to have this formation, which they do, 2 units separated by an empty space, and then they'd be allowed to play this card. After both players choose whether or not to contribute a card, you will reveal it, and then you'll sum up the difference in the damage. The difference here is that this is now 9 versus 6, so 3 hits will go through. Each of these units has health equal to their combat value, so it takes 2 hits to knock out one of these tanks, and that tank is going to go to the side of the board in the scrap and count as 2 points towards me. Any excess does not go over, and damage is not tracked in between battles. The first way the game can end is when the 11th piece is added to the scrapyard, at which point you count how much health worth of destroyed pieces is in the scrap. So even though red has more units in here, the blue player has 11 worth of damage and the red only has 8, meaning because blue has taken more damage overall, red would win in this situation. The other way the game can end is if one of the player's headquarters is destroyed in a battle. This occurs when, in a situation like this, red has declared a war zone that includes this cluster of hexes that includes blue's headquarters. It also contains this and this cluster of hexes, so red's in a very good position and has shut out any of these blue units from being able to jump in. They can't move through red's blockings over here. They can't build more units over here because this vehicle is blocking the path there. So blue has to try to defend their base, which has 4 hit points as determined by the 2 leaders they drafted. So by moving their vehicles out into the relevant hexes of the war zone, they're hoping to be able to defend themselves. Each player throws a battle card into the mix here, and even though blue has brought up their combat value for this battle up to 11 in this example, the red player has a total of 15 from their ACVs, tanks, and Paloozas, plus their war card. Since there's a difference of 4 in favor of the red team, that is enough to take out the blue headquarters, and the blue player has lost. So those are the 2 ways to win at Knee Deep in Hexes. Right out the gate, I'll say that this game succeeds where a lot of other video game adaptation styles or games inspired clearly by the video games kind of flub it. And I think one of the things there is complexity. This game is very streamlined. There's 3 types of units. There's 3 types of buildings. There's only a few rules. Your turn structure is laid out fairly well, and there's only these 2 types of resources. I like what the game does with that. If you build a refinery next to some hexes that give you those resources, you just get them. You don't have to do, like in a lot of these games, build those grunt workers that all they do is run out there, grab the resource, bring it back to your base. That's all automated. That's all kind of just whisked away, and it leaves you with just the most fun parts, the tanks, building up stuff, making a few buildings that are going to be crucial, and then going out there and fighting. It also has a really clever system because these games cannot be real-time. There's just no way to, well, I mean, you can put sand timers out there. I think there's a game called Time of War that does that. It truly is a real-time strategy game by using sand timers. But that's not really what you want in a board game, as evidenced by the fact that very few people know about Time of War, nor have played it. So this one, using that delayed war fighting sequence, is really neat. You declare that war zone, which is a little bit hard to see sometimes. What is a cluster of those hexes? There's always 3 clusters involved in a battle, but it gives your opponent time to react to it. I think that that is a simple system. It's streamlined. It gives that feeling of kind of going at the same time, even without actually going at the same time. It just means that they have time to respond to what they're seeing happening. That's a good way to do it in a board game. Not having too many special rules, not having too many special units, but being able to draft between different leaders. Hey, this leader gives my tanks the build ability. So those middle units can also construct buildings, not just those ACVs, the weakest ones. Having a power that you can move the buildings and stuff. Those powers are small and fun, and they create a little bit of asymmetry between the 2 players with their custom decks. And it's really like, hey, do you want your deck to have a few more war cards? Do you want them to have some sneaky surprise cards? Do you want some better defense? And that's kind of the breakdown of it, at least in the base box. I know there's some expansion stuff that'll be coming in the future, but in terms of what comes in the base box, it's not too complicated. There's also a really nice ease of the production. They created a board that has a map pre-printed on one side. You can customize the back side. The trays that come with it comes with a lid, which I think is crucial. But not only that, one of the actual trays serves as the lid to the second tray. So just things like that that make both the design of the game and the design of the physical product streamlined, smooth, things that I really appreciate. Now, the drawback to this is I don't think the game is necessarily a looker. I don't love this name. I don't understand the metatextual connotations of knee-deep in hexes. These people don't live in a hex world. We see the hexes as the purveyor from above. That part's very strange to me. But the biggest issue that I have with the game is that it is fairly unforgiving with skill gap. It is a little bit like chess, very strategic, very, very strategic, to the point where the person who knows the game better is very likely going to win. I've played this both as the more experienced player. I've played this as the less experienced player. I got demolished by the designer of this game, who, to be fair, should be pretty good at it. But I think that's the biggest drawback for me, is that because the battle is fairly deterministic, there's a little bit of randomness with what cards has your opponent drawn, what have they chosen to put into their deck, and if you know what they have, then you have a way better knowledge base to say, they probably have a 5 strength war card. They probably don't have a big hitter, so if I make this move, I'm very likely to win this battle. I know how to draw opponents out into a losing position. All those types of things that just come from knowing the game. So for that reason, as much fun as I have with it, I do think that this is a tremendously smooth and rewarding design. I also think that I'm going to continue to only play this game casually from time to time, instead of making this one of those I'm excited to pull out more often, because I don't want to have a growing knowledge gap for when I show this to people. I'm in a position where I teach games to people a lot, which is different from where you might be. You might have a consistent game group where you're going to want to just dive into this. Maybe you'll want to go to conventions and play this at a tournament level, and I don't want that. But I do feel like that is a little bit of the experience kind of baked into the design. So overall, I'm going to give this a very good score. This is a 7.5. I'm recommending this. This is getting a Dice Tower seal of approval because I think that it does so many things so well. It's clearly a love letter to that genre of video game that, honestly, there hasn't been a lot of even in the last several years, video game-wise. And I think it does it in a way that board games should try to recreate the excitement and the feel from video games without necessarily trying to recreate the minutia, because you as a human have to upkeep all of that stuff instead of the computer doing it. So a very nicely designed game, a great way to implement something like this, something I have a lot of fun with, a 7.5 from me for Knee Deep in Hexes. So thanks everybody for coming out to this review. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out more stuff if you want to see other reviews of great games out there, and many not great games. We'll try to tell you the best things that might fit what you want. Thanks for coming out, folks. My name's Chris Yee. Have yourselves a great day.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Bassett.
Seriously, should not have been called Knee Deep in Hexes. Anything else. Knee deep in bloodshed, knee deep in gunfire, knee deep in shrapnel, knee deep in bullets, knee deep in Valvoline. From the people who brought you Knee Deep in Hexes, polyamino bloodbath, tile-laying terror, machines on maps, trick-taking tyranny, hexagonal hellfire, bloodbath and beyond.